All right, hello there, thrill seekers. Let's talk about self-power and other power. What the heck do those words mean? We'll talk about that after 17 short seconds of unconscious power by the Iron Butterfly.
We all want to prepare you. The unbelievable is going to happen.
All right, the unbelievable is going to happen. You know, there was an interview with some punk rock magazine that asked us Zero Defects back in 1983 or whatever who our influences were, and the other guys were saying Black Flag and who's the Minor Threat especially. Anyway, I said Iron Butterfly and King Crimson, and it was true. I used to like to sneak Iron Butterfly and King Crimson riffs into Zero Defects songs. All right, so let's talk about self-power and other power. This is partially inspired by an incident that happened to me a couple of days ago. I was out walking Ziggy around the neighborhood, and these girls came out of a car. Like they look like teenagers, but they must have been older. Anyway, they step out of a car, and they're right in front of me, and they say, "Oh, can we talk to you a little bit?" I'm like, okay. And I could see they had the little name badges that identified them as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons, and they had their names on them and stuff. And they talked to me about Jesus and things, and they didn't really proselytize me too bad, but they came along and accompanied me on my walk with Ziggy, because I was like, oh, whatever, I'm always up for it. And at one point, one of these young women said something like, it's great to know that Jesus is up in heaven watching over me, taking care of me. And this kind of made me think about this idea of self-power and other power. It's something I came across early in my studies of Zen, and I don't remember where. I was reading various books about Buddhism, and not all of them were great, but this self-power and other power came up. And I looked it up on Google, and the first definition they give me is one of these AI generated definitions, which I do not trust, because the AI generated definitions are generally the most common understanding of whatever it is you're looking up or looking for, whatever, but they're not necessarily the correct ones. But I think that's useful in this case, because this is how I understood self-power and other power, and this is how most people, apparently, according to the AI, seem to understand it. Okay, here we go. In Buddhism, self-power, jidiki, refers to achieving enlightenment through one's own efforts, meditation, and discipline, typical of Zen, while other power, tadiki, refers to relying on the grace and power of Amida Buddha for salvation, central to Pure Land Buddhism. So that's basically how most people seem to think of it, and I think that's probably close enough to the real definition, but I think there's more to it than that. In my opinion, religions, like most versions of Christianity, and obviously including Mormonism, as indicated by the person I spoke to, is a kind of other power. So what you do is you rely upon the power of some supernatural force or being. In this case, it's Jesus, in the case of the Mormons, but it could be Amida Buddha, who is supposedly... I realize a lot of people don't know this, so I should say this first. There are a lot of Buddhas. A lot of people don't know that. But in Buddhism, there isn't just one Buddha. There's who knows how many Buddhas. And one of the other Buddhas, other than Shakyamuni Buddha, who's the historical Buddha, is Amida Buddha. And he supposedly created this place called the Pure Land, somewhere, in outer space, or who knows, in another dimension, in which it is easy for people to follow the Buddhist way and attain enlightenment much easier than it is here. And the theory among the Pure Land Buddhists, and I'm probably botching this, so anybody who's a Pure Land Buddhist can tell me what points I'm going wrong at, but my understanding of the theory among Pure Land Buddhists is that chanting Namu Amida Butsu, which is praise to Amida Buddha, is a way to call upon the power of Amida Buddha to help you be reborn in the next life in the Pure Land. And it's I think, really similar to Christianity, because in Christianity you have Jesus, who's, as my my new Mormon friend, said, is up in heaven watching over me and helping me. And in Zen, we don't talk too much about that other power, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do talk about it. But anyway, the general feeling is that you're doing it yourself. You're doing it by your own volition. You're doing your own meditation. You're disciplining yourself, as the AI-generated answer says, and you're working out your own salvation for yourself. In my own case, I had tried to be a Christian. Early in my interest in religion, I didn't grow up with any sort of religion in my family. Nobody pushed a religion on me. We weren't raging atheists. We were just kind of a-religious people, not religious people. And I wanted to be a Christian. When I was in my late teens and stuff, I was trying to be a Christian, but I found I couldn't believe in it. I couldn't believe in that other power. I couldn't believe that Jesus Christ had died for my sins and was there to save me. I had too many doubts about it, and I couldn't do it. And so I wanted to find a path that I could do, and I wandered into the Hare Krishna movement. And the Hare Krishna movement, I think, is another good example of this other power idea. So the Hare Krishnas are interesting in that their version of Hinduism is almost a perfect match, as far as I'm concerned, to Christianity. Not in the details, but in the general approach to things, which is that you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and you do that, I think, 16 rounds of 108 times, so 108 times 16 per day. You're supposed to do that. I don't know how many that works out. A lot. You're supposed to chant it for about 2 hours a day. And chanting Hare Krishna mantra for 2 hours a day calls upon the power of Krishna. I noticed, I was watching some videos of the leader, Srila Prabhupada of the Hare Krishna movement, the guy who founded the thing, and he always pronounces it Krishna. He puts the accent on the na, so maybe that's the proper way to pronounce it instead of Krishna. Anyway, Krishna, you call upon the power of Krishna to help you be reborn into Krishna Loka. And I guess, as far as my understanding, and if there's any Hare Krishnas watching, you can tell me if I'm wrong, if you manage to get reborn in Krishna Loka, you get to stay there forever. Unlike the Pure Land, which I think, like most ideas of Buddhism, would be a temporary place, and then you would go on to the next thing, and the next thing would supposedly, probably, again, Pure Land people can enlighten me on this, be a lifetime in which you could do the meditation and become enlightened, or maybe you just get enlightened in the Pure Land and just vanish. That's one of the interesting things that a lot of people don't know about the Buddhist idea of reincarnation, is that the object of reincarnation, if we can say there is one, is to just disappear. So you don't want to be reincarnated. A lot of people get very excited about reincarnation and think, oh boy, I get to be reincarnated forever. The Buddhists would think, and the Hindus too would think, that's a bad thing, and they want to disappear from this universe. So one of the sayings of the Buddha was that he was praising one of his disciples, saying that his personality had completely disappeared from this universe after he died. So there you go. That's the goal. The goal is to disappear. But of course, there's nuances to that, and maybe I should do a whole video on this. You don't actually disappear. You become just like the Dalai Lama. You become one with everything. Have you seen that video where somebody tries to tell the Dalai Lama the pizza joke? I'll see if I can find it and put it in here.
So the Dalai Lama walks into a pizza shop.
Cosa shop, correct?
Pizza shop.
Pizza?
Pizza shop, yes.
Yeah, pizza shop. And says, "Can you make me one with everything?"
What's that?
Anyway, you become one with everything, so you don't actually disappear. You merge with the whole totality of everything, but your individuality is no longer a thing anymore. Okay. So a lot of people are surprised when they come across examples of other power within Zen Buddhism. And here's one of the sort of classic versions, which I've talked about on this video channel before. This is the chant book that I don't know if they've probably updated this by now, but this is the daily sutras and verses and texts that I got at the San Francisco Zen Center. They pass these out when they're doing their chanting services, and if you want, you can give them $10 and they'll let you keep one. So I paid them $10 and they let me keep one. And this chant, Eihei Kosu Hotsu Ganmon, which is from sound of the river valleys and form of the... Anyway, Keisei Sanshiki, I'll look up the English translation of it and put it down below if you want to see what it is. Voices of the river valley and form of the mountains. The Eihei Kosu Hotsu Ganmon says, "We vow with all beings from this life on throughout countless lives to hear the true Dharma, that upon hearing it no doubt will arise in us, nor will we lack in faith, that upon meeting it we shall renounce worldly affairs and attain the Buddha Dharma, and that in doing so the great earth and all living beings together will attain the Buddha way. Although our past evil karma has greatly accumulated, indeed being the cause and condition of obstacles in practicing the way, may all Buddhas and ancestors who have attained the Buddha way be compassionate to us and free us from karmic effects, allowing us to practice the way without hindrance." So we're calling upon the Buddhas and ancestors to help us, which doesn't sound very Zen if your idea of Zen is that Zen is completely about jiriki, about self-power. And Dogen advises us to say the following chant: "Those who in past lives were not enlightened will now be enlightened. In this life, save the body, which is the fruit of many lives. Before Buddhas were enlightened, they were the same as we. Enlightened people of today are exactly as those of old." And we're calling upon the Buddhas and ancestors to help us. There is also a chapter in Shobo Genzo called Kanon, I think is the usual title, and Kanon is Kuan Yin or Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and Dogen talks about how the Bodhisattva of compassion has millions of hands and eyes and will help those who call upon her. Usually the Bodhisattva of compassion is portrayed as a female, but sometimes in more ancient versions it's he, she is a male, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, you call upon the Bodhisattva of compassion to help you and help you through and help you gain enlightenment or whatever it is that you feel you need in this life. Now, in my own situation, I told you I didn't have the faith to believe that Jesus was going to help me. And then when the Hare Krishnas came along and they just substituted Krishna for Jesus, I couldn't believe in Krishna any more than I could believe in Jesus. So I could accept this Zen Buddhist way of working it out yourself, doing meditation and doing practice and trying to get it yourself. But the thing is, you can't get it by yourself. That's one of the reasons I should have said when I was talking about reasons that you need to have a teacher if you want to study Buddhism. That's one of the reasons, is because you can't really do it all by yourself. I've realized this in a big way in my own life lately, which is that, as a lot of people know, I'm undergoing medical treatments. I'm going to get radiation treatment in about 2 hours from now, or an hour and a half from now. Doing that every day for a month, except for weekends. So this is a very, very serious medical condition, and the only way I have been able to get through it is through the help of others. Doctors, nurses. Nurses actually have been more helpful than the doctors, although the doctors, of course, are very helpful. And also my friends, my wife, my extended Mexican family out there in Los Feliz have been really, really helpful and supportive and enabled me to survive this. As a human being, just in general, human beings don't survive on their own. They need a community to survive. That's one of the kind of really significant aspects of us as an animal species, is that we're not loner animals. We need help of others. There's also the idea of otherworldly forces in the form of bodhisattvas, or if you're a Christian, maybe angels, or maybe Jesus. I don't know what other religions have for that. The idea of these kind of spiritual forces that can help you. You would think that it was completely absent from Zen Buddhism if you were taking up this idea that is completely all about jidiki, about self-power. But they're not. They're all over the place. In Dogen's writings, in other places, they're all over the place. It's just that they're less emphasized, but there's a strong undercurrent of belief in these forces. But the thing I like about Zen Buddhism is they don't insist on any kind of specificity. Like if I told those nice Mormon girls that I believed that Kanon, the Bodhisattva of Compassion, or the Buddhas and ancestors were looking over me the way that they think Jesus is looking over them. Yeah, is that right? Anyway, the way they think of Jesus. I think they might reject that. I know a lot of Christians who I've talked to would definitely reject that because it has to be Jesus Christ who you believe in. And the Hare Krishnas are a little bit more open. They'll let you believe in Jesus Christ or Buddha or Krishna, but they kind of insist upon it being within their pantheon of gods and whatever, goddesses and things. The Zen Buddhists, on the other hand, aren't too specific. We call the force that helps us, we call it Kanon, the Kuan Yin, or the Buddhas and ancestors, out of just a sort of a linguistic convenience. We don't do it to insist that it has to be exactly this form out there. But there is something in the universe that helps us. And I really feel that. Now, I looked at a video the other day, which was when I was waiting for a radiation treatment, in fact, and it was a video about a guy who, or by a guy who was telling us about the Buddhist books he would most recommend for beginners. That's a mouthful. And one of them happened to be Hardcore Zen, so that was nice. That was my first book about Buddhism. And there was another book, can't remember the title. If I remember the title, I will put it on the screen. I'm doing that too much today.
Zen and the Art of Happiness.
But the book said that you should view everything that happens to you as the best thing that could happen to you. Now, in my case, dealing with this very serious disease whose name begins with a C that I do not like to say, but you can figure out what it is since I'm getting chemotherapy and radiation for it. Don't ask me. You figured it out. Being encumbered with this disease, I think, is this the best thing that could happen to me? How am I supposed to think of this as the best thing that could happen to me? But there are ways I can think of even this as the best thing that could happen to me. For example, I reflect on the way my mother died. My mother died of Huntington's disease, which I don't want to go into the whole skedaddle, I don't know what word I want to hear. And I don't want to go into the whole thing of what Huntington's disease is, but it's probably, you'd be hard-pressed to think of a worse disease to get. Although they're now making inroads into something like a cure for it, I've heard. So, maybe we'll have a cure for it at some point in the future. Apparently in England, they've got something cure adjacent to it, but when my mom had it, there was nothing. There's basically nothing you could do. It's a degenerative disorder of the body and mind, and you just kind of waste away over a period of, for my mom, it was about 3 or 4 decades. So that was awful. And I have read that if you have, and I should mention that this is a hereditary disease. So her mom had it, my mom had it. There was a very good chance that I would develop it, and I'm 62 years old this year, and I'll be 62 in a couple weeks officially. And it should have. Normally, it manifests by the time you're in your 30s, so it's very unlikely. It's almost completely impossible for me to have it now. But I've never been checked, so it's possible I have the gene. Whatever. But I didn't get that. At least I didn't get it like my mom did. If I have it at all, I don't think I have it at all. But who knows? So this is better than that, because at least what I've got is treatable, and the doctors give me a very good prognosis. I hope they're right. I have a certain amount of faith, but I don't know that they're right. They may be wrong, but they give me a good prognosis, so that's good. Nobody gave my mom a good prognosis. It was pretty dark for her, and I didn't get that. So in that sense, there's this idea that I've heard around sort of Hindu Buddhist circles that if you have a strong practice, if your karma is inevitable, that, for example, you're going to get cut in half by a sword, your practice will make it so that somebody just comes along and pokes you with a needle or something like that. That it lessens the karmic burden that you have. And I don't know if that's true, but maybe it's true, and maybe this is, maybe karmically I was bound to die of the same disease as my mother did, but because of my practice, it ends up being that I have this stuff that I'm getting treated for, and hopefully I will eventually overcome. So in that sense, it's a good thing. It's also revealed to me the real kindness of some of my friends, my wife in particular, and my friend Rob, who's been really, really helpful. Shout out to Rob. I know he watches my videos. He even accompanied me to, I think, 6 or 7 of the chemotherapy sessions, which are 4 or 5 hour long sessions where I'm just I'm sitting on this kind of comfy chair getting heavy drugs pumped into me for hours on end, and there's really nothing to do. And he accompanied me on that, and that was great, and he's been really helpful and giving me rides to places and all that. So I got to experience that kindness. Also, my friend Bob Ritchie, who doesn't watch these videos, he's a guy I didn't really know before all this happened, but once all this happened, he stepped up and became very, very helpful. So I got to experience that. And also my family, my extended family especially. My sister's been helpful. She's about the only one left of my blood relatives, well, other than my nephew and niece and things like that, of my older blood relatives. Anyway, she's been helpful, but especially my wife's family. Been tremendously helpful. I'm going in for a surgery on Friday, February 20th, 2026. So in case you're watching this in the future and you don't know what Friday I'm talking about. And they're gonna help me in and out of the hospital. They're coming all the way from LA to do that, so that's great. So I got to experience these things, and of course the kindness of Ziggy. I've pointed this out. He's been amazingly empathetic with me through all this. So I got to experience something that perhaps I wouldn't have experienced if I didn't have this terrible disease. So there's always kind of this upside, and there's always this kind of sense that this thing that's happening to you, if you look at it the proper way, is the best thing that could possibly happen to you. So that's one of the things that this book, whose title I've forgotten, tells you to. I've never read that book. It tells you to keep that idea in mind, which I think is very useful. And that's also tariki. That's also other power. Something is coming from outside of me. So it's not all just my own efforts. So I think really there is no pure self-power, and there is no other power. And I think anybody who is involved in Zen, or who is involved in Pure Land Buddhism, Zen being the self-power one and Pure Land Buddhism being the other power one, I think anybody who is serious about those would tell you that no, it's not completely, a Zen person would tell you it's not completely your own self-power, and a Pure Land person would tell you it's not completely the power of Amida Buddha. You have to make some effort yourself. Now, as to how this goes with Christians and Hare Krishnas, I think their idea is that you're hopeless. you got no power of your own. There's nothing you can do. I think certain forms of Christianity are especially really adamant about this idea that you have nothing, you can't do anything to work out your own salvation. You have to trust that Jesus is going to do it for you. And if that works for you, then great, that's fine. But there you go. That's my little treatise or little thing about self-power and other power. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to be part of the other power that helps me, you can send me a donation. Hey, that was a good segue this time. And if you want to send a donation, you can go to hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and my Patreon accounts, and those are my only ways of making a living these days, especially because this past year I had to cancel one of my biggest moneymakers of the year, which is, and I don't do it just for the money, but it is one of the things that draws some money into me, which is my European tour. I had to cancel that because of this illness I'm dealing with. So it really helps me. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.
Hey Ziggy, there you are in your Marty McFly outfit. You know, I talked about you in today's video.
You've been really helpful to me. Look at you in your Superman pose. Yeah, I'll leave you alone. Oh, look, you got snot in your nose. Hope the viewers can't see that. All right, bye, Ziggy.